It is much more important to be right and to be righteous and to be true and truthful than it is to be empathetic. When empathy leads you to affirming someone's sin, it becomes toxic empathy. And toxic empathy and love are not the same things. 1 Corinthians 13:6 says, love rejoices with the truth. And so loving someone does not mean that you have to affirm or celebrate all of their choices. In fact, it means telling the truth, speaking the truth to them, never rejoicing in evil, never rejoicing in their sin. And so don't be deluded by this message of empathy bullying, which tells you that being empathetic is the most important thing. And being empathetic means that you can never call something gross or wrong or sin. Revive your ick instinct and call it out. Empathy isn't always bad by any means. It can actually be an incredible motivator for Christ-like and selfless love, but it cannot be our number one driver, and it can so easily be misdirected. For example, in this issue, when it comes to these two men who want to buy a baby, empathy bullies would say, well, you should have empathy for these two men who can't have a baby naturally. First of all, they have chosen a relationship that does not bear fruit, that does not bear children. Okay, like that's the trade-off. But what about if you're going to have empathy? Why not empathy for this child who is being forced to grow up without a mother? This is not altruistic. They purposely created this child knowing that they were going to rob this child of a mother. That child will be wondering where her mother is her entire life. What about that? It's funny because in this world of toxic empathy, empathy shaming, empathy bullying, empathy manipulation, whatever you want to call it, what we're hearing from those empathy mongers is you must have empathy for the sinner and not for the victim of sin. Even Christians fall into this. Like, I must have unconditional, affirming empathy for these men who are doing something abominable, and zero empathy for the victim of those abominable choices. It's a tool of Satan. It really is. And we've got to be more discerning about that. We've got to not only revive our ick, but we've got to get some gumption to say, no, I'm speaking up for the baby girls and baby boys who are being created to be motherless or fatherless. Okay, last thing on this, just a reminder, those of you who listen to my podcast have heard me say this a lot, but fatherlessness is always a category of oppression in the Bible. God is a God to the fatherless. He takes up their cause. He's their advocate. Even those who categorize yourself as like social justice Christians, I've got my own problem with that terminology, but you talk about doing justice, loving mercy, Micah 6:8, taking up the cause of the orphan, the widow, the fatherless. Okay, but through sperm selling, we are creating purposely fatherless children. Through egg selling and surrogacy, we are purposely creating this historically new category of motherless children. These are categories of oppression in the Bible. Christians are supposed to fight against fatherlessness and motherlessness. We are to do everything that we can to mitigate that and mitigate the harm created by that. And so Christians who care about justice, who care about the vulnerable and the marginalized in society, have to be speaking up against We have to be speaking up against the intentional creation of motherless and fatherless children. It is not true that kids just need adults that love them or two parents that love them. No, the gender matters. The mother and the father actually matter. All of that matters. And remember, this is different than adoption because adoption redeems an already existing broken situation. Whereas surrogacy, egg selling, sperm selling purposely creates a broken situation. And that father hunger, that mother hunger is still there in children who have never known what it's like to have a mother, and children that have never known what it's like to have a father. They innately crave that because God placed that in all of us. It's part of our nature. It's all cruel. It's all cruel. And Christians have to do a much better job at speaking out against it for the sake of kids.